I will explain the buoyant force experiment. That's also what we call Archimedes principle. In this experiment, we're going to study fluids. Interestingly, since 70% of the Earth is covered by liquid is one form of fluid, and air is another, and other gases are also fluids. So in this class, however, we spent very limited time because fluid is a specialty area. So the study of fluids belongs to, for example, fluid dynamics. So here is more of an introduction to buoyant force, Archimedes principle, liquids and gases in general. Okay, what is really interesting about fluids is that, things can float in them or they can sink in them. And so the difference between floating and sinking, that makes it interesting. So for example, fish can go down deep into the sea. They can dive down if they need to, and they can float up when they want to. So this all depends on the forces. So we're gonna apply Newton's law, and we're gonna study why sometimes object will float and why sometimes they can sink. And this is also very important to human development. So for example, um, after navigation was developed, people sail for long distance, and the boats and the ships, they can float. So this all has to do with buoyant force and Archimedes principle. So before we go forward, we want to review about tension force. So if we have two objects hanging on two sides and we have a scale in the middle, a lot of people would think if you have 9.8 newtons on the left and 9.8 newtons on the right, then your scale should read 19.6. In fact, it's not. It's exactly 9.8 newtons. So that's the first thing we want to introduce in this experiment is tension force. So tension is the force in a string or rope. And this tension force is consistently the same value at different points of the rope. So this is the first question I want to clarify before we're able to perform this experiment. Another is a spring scale. So here's an example of a spring scale. And spring scale is used to measure tension force. Tension force is a scientific word that's for pulling force. So it is actually the force you pull. However, we expect the students to be able to use scientific terms. So you are expected to know what the word tension mean and also be able to use it. Okay. And so using tension force, we'll be able to measure the Archimedes principles buoyant force. So here's a quick review also. Since we talk about pulling force, so by the way, we want to review what's a pushing force. A pushing force is also called a normal force. So whether you have a scale put it horizontally or vertically, as long as you push it, it'll display the force so that the bathroom scale is often used to measure weight. However, it's really designed to measure pushing force. If you simply push it sideways, it'll also show you how much that force is. And so in this experiment, what we're going to do is we're going to use our Newton spring scale. So we have this very accurate up to 0.02 newtons scale. This scale has a range of 1.0 newtons. We're going to use this Newton scale to detect the very small difference of tension force when you measure an object, for example, a 50-gram or 100-gram weight in the air, or when you have this object completely submerged in a fluid or liquid. In the lab, we use water, which is the easiest and safest. Okay, so what's important is that the difference is small, so we need to do the experiment slowly and gently. To avoid the friction. And here is the set up. So first you measure it in the air and then you measure it in water. Using the differences and set up the Newton's law equations. This is a pattern of equilibrium. Equilibrium means at rest or moving at constant velocity. In this case, it's at rest. When it's at rest, this pattern requires Newton's which law? Yeah, Newton's first law. Equilibrium, Newton's first law. Accelerating, Newton's second law. Two objects, Newton's third law. So we can apply Newton's first law to set up two equations. One is for the object in the air. The other is for the object in water. So by solving those equations, we can figure out what? Guess. The density of the liquid and the density of the object. So in this case, we use water. So we can actually find the water density as a constant. This is what we call a material constant. There are three types of constant: universal constant, such as the speed of light; material constant, such as density of water; and object constant, such as the mass of the Earth or the mass of the sun. So this is the experiment setup. What's important is when it's submerged, it needs to be completely submerged. The object needs to be completely under the water surface. And in order to get meaningful result from this experiment, we need to lower the object into water slowly and gently, and also bring it out slowly and gently to protect the integrity of the very delicate and sensitive spring inside our spring scale. So that's about the equipment safety. And in the meanwhile, be careful about personal safety. Because we use water, you want to make sure water does not spill on electronics or any other important things that are not supposed to get wet. And so this is the experiment for buoyant force. I want to summarize. We use a 1.0 Newton range and 0.02 accuracy spring scale to measure the tension force of an object, pulling it at the end. This object was put in two different patterns. One is put in air, the other is put in water. The difference is when it's put in water, water has a buoyant force pushing it up. So the difference will show us the buoyant force, and therefore we can figure out the density of the object. This is also a way of measuring different densities, which is the material constant of that object. So this is the lab, and that help us to understand better what tension force is, the measurement equipment, this spring force, the scales range and accuracy, and also the buoyant force, Archimedes principle, and the two patterns for Newton's law. One is equilibrium, one is accelerating. So these are all expected. If you have any questions, go forward and ask. Remember, all questions are good questions. The only bad one, guess what? Is the one you left in your head.